Hi everyone, welcome back to CMN 201. This is for our class for Wednesday, the 27th, as we are moving close to the ending of the semester, believe it or not. And our next film happens to be 28 Days Later. Now, this film came out in 2002 and oftentimes is viewed as a commentary on the millennium. It does occur to me, however, that this film seems to be particularly relevant considering our own experiences right now with COVID. That was not necessarily the intention of the film nor my attention when I had initially assigned it. So I just wanted to let you know about that it is if you've never seen it before, about a virus that does lead to devastation. But the good news is that our virus has not led nearly to the level of devastation that this film depicts. So I'm quite grateful for that. But what I wanted to do before talking about that film was to put some closure onto the Blair Witch Project and also talk about our final project. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you want to run by any ideas to me, this is the time to contact me. That will be due on the 21st, which happens to be Wednesday. This is our last class. This is the class in which we will have our final examination. What I will be doing is posting our final exam, which will be an essay exam. And I'll ask you to choose from a series of essay topics, a couple of them. And basically, it's open book, open notes, so that you can access things like your journals and our class notes and our textbooks and so forth. And it's a way for you to synthesize some of the major ideas that we've been talking about over the course of the semester. So the best way really to prepare for the final is to have done all of the readings that I assigned, to have watched all of the films that I had assigned, and to have participated in all of the attendance questions, both answering and also reading, because as you know, you're not necessarily required to answer your peers, although I've been responding to you, but you are required to read everyone else's responses so that we give you a sense of what it was that we discussed during class if we had been meeting in person. And that said, I'm offering this class in the spring semester in person. My intention is to offer it in the fall online and to offer it in the spring in person so that I can get to different kinds of audiences. So if you know anybody who might be interested, or even if you yourself just want to sit in person and talk about these films, you have the opportunity to do so in the spring semester if you so wanted. So at this point, I suspect that most of you are probably doing a paper for the final project, which is perfectly fine. But I had indicated that you could utilize more creative approaches. I have had students in the past who have done things like filmed their own horror film with some commentary about what their rationale was when they went about constructing that. I had a student last semester who actually constructed a video game based on horror film. So there are other ways that you could proceed, but I suspect that the traditional paper will be something that most of you will be doing, especially as we get closer to the due date. For the final examination, you will have 24 hours to respond to that final. If we were meeting in person, you'd have 3 hours. So that's basically the amount of time that you should be investing into the final, 2 to 3 hours. But I'll be posting it on the 21st and Wednesday by 6 o'clock, and then asking you to have 24 hours to respond in turn. So that's, again, what we would be doing if we were meeting in person. So the Blair Witch Project, as you know, shows us a group of individuals that quickly falls apart, illustrating that the monster truly is within, not necessarily the external monster. It's something that we've seen. It's a trope at this point with films like zombie tales such as Night of the Living Dead. But I think that's what's most interesting about this film is the question of the importance of documenting through film. Now, I just finished actually over the Thanksgiving break watching Nope. by Jordan Peele. And I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch it. I encourage you to watch it if you haven't. I don't want to give away spoilers, but I can say that similar themes are present in Jordan Peele's film Nope, about the importance of having documentation to prove reality. And of course, we live in a time now that documentation can be easily manipulated, less so at the time of the Blair Witch Project. But basically, I think about social media and about how things just don't seem to be real in our time unless you document what it is that has happened. Whether it be your lunch or whether it be something that is of greater import. Of course, Jordan Peele is going to give social commentary in there in terms of ethnicity, which is one of the things that he's done with his film Us, which I also highly recommend, and the film Get Out, which is how we are going to be ending this semester. So I happen to be a fan of Jordan Peele's. But when watching his film Nope, it occurred to me the similarities with the Blair Witch Project about how something really isn't real unless you can film it and show that and make money off of that. We know that the marketing campaign for the Blair Witch Project was absolutely genius, considering how early it was in the days of the internet, where they created a website and they created a kind of narrative within a narrative. That not only was the Blair Witch Project a narrative, but the idea that this was a true narrative through the way that it was presented on websites took on a life of its own. Gender also plays an interesting role, and I noted that some of you had indicated that in your journals. We've got a strong female lead. That said, we see how it's in part because of her leadership, or perhaps lack of leadership, that the group falls apart. So you can sort of think about what that means in terms of gender. Of course, the idea is that all of them participate in the destruction that results, the collapse of the unit, and it strikes me as well how ill prepared they are on so many levels. Though I suspect that even if they were prepared, if the Blair Witch is indeed true, then their preparation would have resulted in the same ending. Note too that witches are oftentimes associated with female and have been persecuted unnecessarily when we think about the idea of gender in this particular piece. But this question of what is reality and what is fiction is something that perhaps, and madness, and what is madness, is something that we've been grappling with the entire semester, starting with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So, 28 days later, up in our text projected fears, they had indicated that they thought this film would achieve a kind of cultural status that it didn't. And again, I'm not sure, as we live in the world of COVID, which is something that, or is something that could make 28 Days Later a kind of cult status film. Definitely an updated zombie tale from many perspectives, though George Romero, the creator of Night of the Living Dead, maintained that this was not a zombie tale because it didn't follow the, quote, rules, unquote, of zombies. That basically these were not reanimated from death, and also they had speed to them in a way that Romero's zombies didn't. Though Romero had acknowledged that his first zombie in Night of the Living Dead, who happens to be trying to break the window of Barbara's car, was rather sprightly, but that he hadn't established many of those rules yet. Some have suggested that this idea of the fast zombie just sort of illustrates the way that society has sped up in the 2000s, so that this would be appropriate. I'll let you contemplate whether that perhaps is a valid argument or perhaps it's just a bit of a stretch. One of the things that I think is interesting about 28 Days Later is that it's a British film. So we've been mostly concentrating on American films, though of course The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari was German. And we will definitely see the British perspective in this particular film. And as people oftentimes forget, as is referenced in the film, Britain is an island, England is an island. So that will be important in terms of you're watching it. Again, I don't want to give away too many spoilers. The virus that ravages is called the rage virus. That's a not so thinly veiled metaphor for the way that rage and hatred is contagious. If you think about what oftentimes happens with mob rules. And the footage that we see in the beginning, it seems like it's real. It's not, but it could very well be real when we see all of the ways that rage is being documented. Again, this idea of filming and that we are consuming. That rage and violence are universal and ultimately contagious. Again, we'll see the destruction of society, a very apocalyptic idea. And I do know that in the 2000s, as is probably the case with every millennium, there is this question about whether or not this is indeed the ending of the world. And I think that fear and that paranoia is evidenced with the way that 28 Days Later was filmed. Definitely what we see is another critique of the media, the government, of the military, and consumerism as well. Very George Romero-like in many respects. The importance of community and others. Do know the hello that both begins and ends the film, which is something I'll talk about later as well. Again, I don't want to give away too many spoilers. And the fact that what we see are a group of survivors trying to create a kind of new family or society for survival. And in some ways, this new family is blind to class differences and to race differences. Again, you'll see this when the characters start interacting with one another. Selena is black, for instance, and Jim is white. And of course, when they unite together, Jim is just a courier, and Selena is a chemist. And of course, they connect with the taxi driver. So again, many of the old rules that would stratify society and separate us from one another disintegrate in an apocalyptic scenario. And I think that is one of the messages from our director, Danny Boyle, how artificial these divisions are in our society. And that society continues, even though when we talk about the ending of the world, we talk about that from a very human-centric perspective, that if our societal structures have broken down, that's the ending of the world. That's not the ending of the world. You will see the animal kingdom surviving quite nicely in this particular film. In fact, we will be seeing an image of two horses, one black, one white. And not only does this illustrate how nature is progressing after the rage virus, but I think the color symbolism is quite significant in terms of some of the commentary about Jim and Selena, who form an interracial connection with one another. If nothing else, this film illustrates that quarantine is effective, something that perhaps could be a message in our own times as we grapple with our own virus. But for our attendance question, and this will be due on Friday, the 2nd of December at 6 p.m. So certainly if you need additional time, let me know. And as I had indicated, you're not necessarily required to respond to your peers, though certainly you're encouraged to, but you are required to read your peers' responses and my responses to them, so that'll give you a bit of an idea of what we would have talked about in class. But what do you think our current society now could learn from 28 Days Later? Again, 28 Days Later wasn't made with the understanding that we would be confronting COVID in our contemporary times, but there were certainly ideas that a virus could devastate society. We've seen things like this before when we've talked about epidemics such as the Spanish flu, which would be about approximately 100 years ago. When we talk about things like AIDS, when we talk about things like even mad cow disease. Of course, none of those, well, the Spanish flu came close to what we've got now, but none of these would have come close to what we see in 28 Days Later, which seems to be the devastation of an entire society. There are sequels. There's 28 Weeks Later, which I don't think is nearly as well done as 28 Days Later. And actually, an interesting piece of trivia, there was in the works to do a 28 Months later. This would be immediately before COVID struck, so I'm not necessarily sure where we are in terms of that. So enjoy 28 days later. If nothing else, enjoy the fact that our society, despite its challenges with a current virus, is nowhere near at the place of 28 days later. And I'm very curious to see what you think our current society could learn from this particular film. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. And we will continue on next class, talking about 28 days later and ultimately our final film. And that happens to be Get Out. Take care. Bye bye.